Ilia versus Justin Gaethje for the lightweight championship. Of course, Ilia Topuria is supposed to be fighting Arman Tsarukyan, but that was a fair argument before Gaethje faced Paddy, which was a legit bullshit fight right there.
What the fuck is that?
Okay, the fight wasn't bullshit, but the matchup absolutely was. Made no sense. But since then, Gaethje is rightfully the interim champion, so he is rightfully next. So this is what we get with. Okay, so straight off the bat, I do not like this fight. I don't like this fight at all. I think this is one of the most one-sided matchups I've ever seen. And 2026 has been an interesting year, man. You would think something is so one-sided. You would think it's clear who the winner in the fight is, but then the opposite happens. But this is very different, man. We're talking about someone who is arguably the pound for pound or second pound for pound best fighter right now after Islam, facing Justin Gaethje, who is arguably at the tail end of his career. Now, he beat Paddy Pimblett, but stylistically, you could see why Gaethje beat Paddy, especially the way he did. When you watch the fight with Paddy, the way Gaethje was throwing hooks and then swinging his head in a circular motion, that's not gonna play well against Ilia in any way. But I can agree that he was probably doing that to fight someone like Paddy. That style does work against someone like Paddy. So I'm not gonna act like that's always how Gaethje fights. But yeah, I don't like this fight. Straight up, we'll be picking Ilia, but there are ways Gaethje can definitely win. So on one side, you got Ilia Topuria, the undefeated wrecking machine and lightweight champion. On the other side, Justin Gaethje, the human highlight reel and arguably the most violent striker in UFC history. Stark contrast with the way these guys match up. This fight is basically precision versus chaos, elite boxing and grappling versus raw pressure and knockout power. And yes, Gaethje has knockout power, but to be fair, I think his power has reduced a little bit. He's not as lethal as back then. Now, of course, he's still dangerous, especially if he keeps landing clean. You do not want to keep getting hit by Gaethje, even with the leg kicks. But that knockout power, I think it's reduced a little bit, in my opinion. But first, let's talk about Ilia Topuria. Like I said, one of the most well-rounded fighters in the sport today. He's undefeated in MMA, and he has already captured UFC titles in 2 divisions. And that's why right now he's the number 2 pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC. Topuria's fight style is built around 3 key elements: his elite boxing, his knockout power, and his high-level grappling. Topuria has some of the cleanest boxing in MMA. He fights with tight combinations, excellent timing, and devastating counter hooks. He doesn't waste punches, and he sets traps. And that's the thing about Topuria, man. He's very precise and obviously very powerful, but he's not swanging and banging. He's not just throwing and trying to find out what sticks to the wall. He's not wasting his punches at all. So first of all, he doesn't waste his punches, right? At the same time, he's setting up a trap for something to land clean. Just a crazy combination of skill set to have. Now, not to talk about his knockout power. He's knocked out legends like Volkanovski, Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira. I mean, we're talking about how impressive it is that Charles Oliveira dominated Max Holloway, but he couldn't do any of that to Ilia Topuria. He literally tried the same takedown tactics, the same techniques, the same getting into the clinch, trying to pick him up. That shit did not work at all with Ilia Topuria. At all. And when you watch that fight, it just reminded me of how good Ilia is. I mean, look at Ilia, right? He knocks out Volkanovski. Volkanovski then goes on to become a 2-time featherweight champion, beating prospects, right? Twice. He knocks out Max Holloway. Max Holloway proves that he still got it, beats Dustin Poirier, then fights Oliveira, even though he lost. He doesn't look washed. knocks out Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira puts on a fantastic performance against Gamrot, puts on a fantastic performance against Max Holloway. So yeah, Ilia is the real deal, bro. So then we get into his high-level grappling, which people forget this, but Topuria is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt with multiple submission wins. So if striking gets dangerous, he can switch levels and dominate on the ground, and it's not a problem for him. I mean, the man's resume at some point had equal submissions and knockouts. He had all submissions and then got into the UFC and then all knockouts. So he's one of the most well-rounded fighters. Now, to be fair, we haven't seen that much of his grappling in the UFC against the highest level of grapplers and elite scramblers on the ground. But he hasn't needed to, he hasn't been put into that situation where he needs to show us, right? It's not his fault that he can easily knock these guys out. That's not his fault. But yeah, well-rounded in the grappling. But this just goes to show that even when he can knock you out, the grappling is the next play. And that showed in his fight against Charles Oliveira. Because like I said, Oliveira tried to handle Topuria the way he handled Gamrot. He tried to handle Topuria the same way he handled Holloway. And he just didn't play out because Ilia knew exactly how to defend and reverse those takedowns. So in Topuria's last 5 fights, like I said, knocked out Charles Oliveira in round 1. Charles Oliveira, former lightweight champion, put him out cold. Knocked out Max Holloway in round 3. Knocked out Volkanovski in round 2. Went to a decision with Josh Emmett and submitted Bryce Mitchell. So his last 5 fights show you exactly how this guy's run has been in the UFC. Well-rounded. You can find a submission in there and scrambling exchanges in his fight against Bryce Mitchell and his fight against Charles Oliveira, right? You can see how the fight will play out if he's not able to get a knockout or a submission. You could see that with his fight with Josh Emmett. And don't get it twisted, just because he didn't knock out Josh Emmett doesn't mean he didn't beat the shit out of him. Josh Emmett's face was bloodied up after that fight. Like, it was pretty bad after that fight, right? So don't get it twisted. Like I said, that's 3 knockouts over former champions and elite contenders in his last 5 fights. Right now, Topuria might be the most dangerous boxer in the UFC, and that's just a fact. Then we get into Justin Gaethje. Of course, we still got to talk about Justin Gaethje. Put some respect in his name. Still one of the best lightweights ever, right? Someone who always proves fans wrong whenever you count him out. So there are ways, and there is a path to victory for Gaethje for sure. But Gaethje, definition of controlled violence. He's a former interim lightweight champion, one of the most exciting fighters the UFC has ever seen. His style evolves around brutal pressure. Gaethje matches forward constantly. Always, he forces opponents into firefights. You can't coast with Gaethje, man. You either have to try and take him out, or it's not gonna end well for you. Of course, Justin Gaethje has devastating leg kicks. His calf kicks are some of the most destructive in MMA, hands down. And he just destroys mobility, man. That's what he does a lot. And the nuclear power, Gaethje has over 20 knockout wins in his career. When he lands clean, people go to sleep. But the key word there is landing clean. Now, Gaethje's last 5 fights, Patty decision for the interim title, of course, that just happened. He was an underdog in that fight. Very good win for him. Made it a dogfight, and the experience played a part. He beat Rafael Fiziev, another prospect. He beat Fiziev twice. And then he lost to Max Holloway, UFC 300, when he got knocked out cold. And then he knocked out Dustin Poirier before that, and then beat Michael Chandler before that. So when you compare both their resume, you can see it's not even on the same level, right? Gaethje beating people like Paddy, Fiziev, and then the way him losing to Max Holloway, who Ilia knocks out, right? Of course, we're not doing MMA math, but you get my point. Knocked out Dustin. That's a good, of course, fantastic win, and everybody beats Michael Chandler, so that's not the biggest thing to brag about right there, right? But yeah, of course, Justin Gaethje, highlight, still great fighter, great record, good run, but when you compare it to Ilia, the difference is there. But with that being said, Gaethje has evolved. Earlier in his career, he was definitely reckless, but now he fights with more patience and calculated pressure. But in his fight against Paddy, he was really reckless, but it made sense because Paddy's a fighter who's, you know, he's like, Scousers don't get knocked out, right? He's not putting his hands up. He's reckless as well, so he was matching that energy. Of course, next thing, how do these guys match up? This fight is fascinating. You know, one-sided, the winner is clear, but still a fascinating matchup because their strengths clash perfectly. It's gonna be a striking battle, all right, straight up. That's just what it's going to be. That's what you're going to expect. Now, how long is that striking battle gonna go on? I don't know, but that's what it's going to be. Topuria has the technical precision. Gaethje has raw destruction. Topuria throws cleaner combinations. Gaethje throws harder single shots and leg kicks. If it becomes a boxing match, Topuria likely has the edge and accuracy. But if it becomes a war, Gaethje is going to own that territory. But then again, we've never seen Topuria being in a war. That's because when he lands clean, fighters go out. Now, if for some reason Gaethje has this granite chin or Topuria is just not landing clean for some reason, then I could see how Gaethje returning into a dogfight. But it's so hard for me to even get there. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not giving Gaethje a chance in this fight. But anyways, of course, another way to see this fight will be like leg kicks versus boxing. So one of the biggest questions in this fight, can Gaethje destroy Topuria's legs? Gaethje's calf kicks have ruined fighters like Tony Ferguson, Rafael Fiziev. If he slows Topuria down early, that changes the fight. But when we go to the grappling, that's where Topuria has a massive advantage. Gaethje has a grappling background, but Topuria's jiu-jitsu is levels above, man. Now, and when you look at Gaethje's record, his history, Gaethje has historically struggled with elite grapplers. He lost submission fights against Khabib, Charles Oliveira. Now, I don't know if Ilia is as good as these guys when it comes to grappling. I would say no, but I think he comes a little bit close, at least for his record, right? Now, how does Ilia win this fight? Obviously, he knocks Gaethje out. But there's a strategy, of course. Onto the leg kicks, Gaethje is gonna start with leg kicks. That's what he has to do. He knows Ilia is lethal. He has to try and stop the mobility. The same way Charles started with the leg kicks against Max Holloway, which was smart. Destroy the mobility early. That's how Gaethje is going to start. So I think Ilia, who has good fight IQ, who is a smart fighter, makes good decisions, I think he's going to get ready and prepare to check those leg kicks. So check the leg kicks from Gaethje and punish Gaethje with counters. He's going to try to box in the pocket. Topuria's hooks and uppercuts are very lethal, so he's going to try and get in the clinch and box in the pocket, just like he did with Oliveira. And then if somehow these things are, he's not being that successful, he's gonna mix it in with the takedowns. So even the threat of grappling could freeze Gaethje. If Topuria fights smart and technical, which he's definitely going to do, he's going to win by a KO or submission. Now for Gaethje, of course, he has the pressure. And like I said, he has to pressure immediately and start with the leg kicks. He needs to destroy the legs of Topuria. There's no, Gaethje has zero, negative chance of winning this fight without trying to destroy Tupuria's legs. That has to be the first thing that he tries to do. Literally, like there's no two ways around it. And he just needs to turn the fight into a chaos. He can't beat Topuria by being clean, point fighting, trying to look for that KO. He needs to find the chaos. So the biggest X factor for this fight is power, man. Both men can end the fight with one punch. Topuria has been knocking out champions, like I said, but Gaethje might have the hardest punches at lightweight. Here's what I think happens. Early on, Gaethje lands some brutal leg kicks and pressures forward, but Topuria's boxing is just too clean. Eventually, Gaethje walks into a counter hook or a combination, and that's when things get dangerous, man. I think Ilia is gonna win by a round 2 or 3 knockout. I think it's obvious, man. I think it's obvious. It's hard to see Gaethje doing anything here. That's why I hate this matchup so far. I don't think this fight is close in any way. But if it turns into a war somehow, Justin Gaethje is one of the few fighters alive who can knock anyone out. That is a possibility, but I just don't see that happening.